Hello, everybody. Looks like we are all here, so I will go ahead and call this meeting of the Public Works Commission to order. And we will start off with a quick roll call. So if you are here, please let me know. Commissioner Ellis.
Here.
Commissioner Crowley.
Here.
Commissioner Hilton.
I am here.
Commissioner Morgan.
I'm here.
Commissioner Collette.
Here.
Awesome. Thank you, everybody. The first order of business today is the approval of the minutes from our last regular meeting on April 6th. And I would entertain a motion.
Chair,
Commissioner Morgan.
I make a motion to approve last time's minutes.
All right, we have a motion. Do we have a second?
I second it.
that, Mr. Chairman.
Second from Commissioner Ellis. Thank you. All those in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Any
Aye.
opposed, the same sign? Hearing none, the motion carries. And we are on to our regular agenda items, and we will kick off with a presentation on the Water Renewal Utility Plan connection fees. And I will turn it over to staff.
Thank you, Chair. These first two items are going to be covered by Heather Buchanan, our Chief Administrative Officer. And the first item is going to be an update on connection fees, and she's going to get into the details of what those are and why the changes are needed and what the actual changes are. So Heather, I will turn, and Heather's remote, so I'm going to turn it over to her online.
Great. Thank you, Steve. And thank you, commission members. Let me get my screen set up for sharing here. Just 1 second. Actually, it'll probably be more than a second, but I'll get it ready here as quickly as possible. Okay, did that work?
Yep, good to go.
Great, thank you. All right. Okay, as Steve mentioned, I'm going to discuss connection fees today. So we'll get started here. So the kind of agenda of my presentation here, we'll talk briefly about what a connection fee is. We'll touch just again briefly as well on the governing case law. We'll review what our current fees are, talk about what our proposed updated fees, some of the changes in the structure of the fees, and answer any questions the commission may have, and quickly talk next steps. So first of all, you've seen this before. There are two components for our water renewal financial needs. We have operation and maintenance and capital investment. So for operation and maintenance, this comprises our day-to-day operations. This is funded using our monthly service charges, interest earnings, and a few other fees. We've got CROC revenues and so forth in there as well. And then on the capital investment side, this is for building our new facilities. We have that funded using connection fees. And also there's a portion of our monthly service fees that go towards that as well. So today we're talking about that connection fee side of the house, and we'll provide more detail on that as well. Looks like my screen's okay. So what is a connection fee? The connection fee is a one-time charge for new customers that are connecting to the system. So the fee is paid at that time that they connect. It's proportional to their estimated usage. So we do a calculation of what the usage should be, and based on that, which you'll see the various fees, but based on that estimated usage, then we calculate that fee. We often term this as purchased capacity. And then if a customer in the future uses more capacity than they purchased originally, they may owe additional fees. So this could be the case. We do this quite often with our industrial customers. We monitor how much usage they use each month. And if they happen to exceed the purchase capacity for flow, for example, they may owe additional flow capacity. So we can assign that for an industrial customer based on the flow or the different constituents, or same thing for a restaurant or another commercial business. So the connection fee is charged as a condition of service. So we assume that when a customer is connecting, they must pay this fee. It's comprised of two major categories. There's a trunk fee and a treatment fee. And the trunk fee has a few smaller fees that we'll talk about today. And then the treatment fee has components currently for flow, BOD, which is biochemical oxygen demand, TSS, which is total suspended solids, and ammonia. So then how does the fee work? So when the city builds a water renewal facility, they'll build a facility large enough to serve both the current level of purchase capacity and then an amount of reserve capacity. So we always consider having enough capacity to serve future customers. So when a customer builds their little building here, they connect to our facility and they buy a little portion of that reserve capacity. And again, it's based on what their estimated usage will be. So at that time, they pay a connection fee. And then after they pay that, then they'll, once they start discharging used water to our facility, then they'll start paying their monthly operations and maintenance fee for the treatment of their used water. So there's a fee for, in the connection fee, there's a fee for that line that connects their building, and also the fee for, at the treatment facility. So when we're talking about governing case law, we utilize what is called the buy-in methodology, which means that we utilize a fee that considers reimbursement of the city's past investment, or also our existing customers' investment into the system that was made to serve growth. So that is, we're recovering that portion for that reserve capacity that I noted in that prior slide. So there's a couple of Idaho Supreme Court decisions that kind of limit our abilities on how we charge this fee. The first one was 1991, and this is referred to as the Loomis versus Haley case, as the city of Haley. And this established in court case law the buy-in methodology. And then more recently, there was a case in 2015, which was the North Idaho Building Contractors Association versus the city of Hayden. And the Building Contractors Association at this time was concerned that the fee that the city of Hayden was charging was being implemented more as a tax rather than a fee for connection. And it also was concerning that the way their fee was structured was not based on prior state court law. So that was really important. So based on those two court cases, then it establishes what our connection fee needs to include, which we must include the full replacement cost of our existing assets. And then we reduce that by any depreciation that we have not previously funded and any bond principal. So those last two items are very important. So for depreciation, the city of Boise, for our public works water renewal assets, we do fully fund depreciation. Our consultants, when they were doing our cost of service studies and our connection fee studies, established and agreed with us that we do fully fund our depreciation. So our reduction for depreciation is essentially zero. So we still put it in the formula, but we're subtracting nothing there. And then the bond principal, our current bond principal outstanding, since we haven't yet issued debt in a very long time, the bond principal outstanding is also a very small reduction. Once we start issuing bond, which we're working on that right now, we'll start reducing the value of the bond principal that's used towards funding the assets that we're constructing. So then our current connection fee. So we'll talk briefly about the single family, multifamily, and then we'll also talk about the commercial fees as well. So this slide shows you what the existing single and multifamily connection fees are. They're separated by trunk fees and treatment fees. So under the trunk fee category, there's single family, duplex, condo, townhouse, mobile home park, and multifamily rates. And so they're all a derivative of the single family, which is, we consider to be what's called a single family dwelling equivalent. And then the others are a derivative of that, basically a little bit of a reduction for those other fees. So a single family currently is charged $1,540. A duplex is $815. And then depending on a condo, townhouse, mobile home park, or multifamily, those are based on a per unit per acre. So assuming a little bit of density here, it goes from 1,540 ranging down to $290 based on the number of units per acre. And then for the treatment fees, the same categories, essentially. A single family unit would be charged $2,035, a duplex $1,615, and then the condo, townhouse, multifamily would range down from $1,615 down to $290. So one thing that's important to hear in this slide to note, though, this duplex, condo, townhouse, mobile home park, and multifamily, those categories will be changing when we look at our proposed fees. So I'll explain that when we get to the proposed section. But one other thing to note here, that the total for a single family, when a person comes in to connect, their fee to build a single family house would be the trunk fee of $1,540 plus the $2,035 fee, for a total of $3,575. Now, if we look at the current connection fees for commercial, it also has a trunk fee and treatment fees. They're defined somewhat differently. A trunk fee is based off of a per single family dwelling equivalent. So again, it goes back to that residential equivalent. We kind of tie everything back to what is considered a single family dwelling equivalent. The trunk fee as well for commercial is $1,540. And then for the treatment fees, there are two rate schedules, what we call a 3-rate schedule and what is a 4-rate schedule. And the differential there is basically the inclusion of ammonia, which is the last item on that list. The 3-rate schedule does not include ammonia, and the 4-rate schedule does include ammonia. So it just depends on whether or not a customer discharges enough ammonia to be tripped into that 4-rate schedule. So for example, one of our large users that does discharge ammonia would be Micron. So that's a technology type of business, or may utilize that. Some of our food producers may also discharge enough ammonia that we would consider that as well. So the fee for flow would be measured in 1,000 gallons per day. And you can see the rate for the 3 or the 4-rate, it's the same. Then for BOD, it's TSS and ammonia. Those rates are all assessed per pound per day. And I won't go through each of the rates there. You can see them on the screen. And then last but not least, for the fee structure is an equivalent assessment fee. So this fee is recovering the cost of 8-inch collection pipe that is adjacent to properties. So if you consider a piece of pipe running in front of a property, this is collecting the value of the 8-inch size of that pipe. Some of our pipes are larger, but it recovers the portion of the 8-inch pipe. So most of our pipes are installed when a developer is out developing a subdivision or whatnot, or a commercial subdivision. And so a lot of times these pipes are installed by a developer. So if that's the case, we do not charge the fee to a separate individual customer coming in to pay that fee, as the developer has already paid for that, and the customer will be paying for that share of the fee when they're buying their lot or their home or whatever from that developer. So these fees are implemented based on the size of the lot. So it's on a square footage basis. It goes from 6,000 square feet up to over 86,000 square feet of the lot size. So for a 6,000 square foot lot, it would be 1,980. And then up to the 86,000 square foot lot, it would be 8,772. So then we'll look at our proposed fees. So just kind of confirming some of our assumptions here. When we were implementing the changes, we made sure that the calculations that were being performed comply with those Supreme Court decisions that I mentioned earlier. We allocate all of our assets based on updated asset allocation methodologies. So we're looking now at allocating our assets to flow, BOD, TSS, ammonia, and phosphorus. And as noted there, for commercial, we're going to be transitioning from ammonia over to total nitrogen eventually. We'll be doing that over the next 3 years, as total nitrogen better captures all types of nitrogen that are being sent to us, rather than ammonia is only capturing one of the types of ammonia, or one of the types of nitrogen that's sent to us. I didn't state that correctly, sorry. And then for single family and multifamily rates, we'll be switching from those categories I showed you earlier, the condo, townhouse, duplex, multifamily. We'll be switching those over to a square footage basis, which I'll show you in just a minute. So then if we look at how the fees are developed, it's pretty simple. The fee per unit is just a simple division. We take the sum of the replacement cost of the assets, less those adjustments that I mentioned, divided by the usable capacity that's available. So we take, to determine the replacement cost of assets, we allocate each asset based on their share of what they treat to flow and the different constituents. So there are a couple examples here. For the West Boise digester, for example, there's no allocation to flow. All of it is allocated to processing or treating the constituents. So 50% would go to BOD, 45% would go to TSS. There's a small allocation to nitrogen and also a small allocation to phosphorus. Whereas if we look at one of the headworks facilities, it is fully allocated to flow and none of the constituents. So you can see each of the assets. We go through the asset listing and allocate each of them depending on how they are treating the different either flow or constituents. And then the amount for each of the flow and each of the constituents is totaled across all of the assets. Then we subtract the amount for outstanding debt principal. And then we divide that amount by the number of units of usable capacity. So that creates that fee per unit that we're talking about. So for our proposed connection fees, the slide shows what the single family and multifamily residential are going to be. So when we were looking at our analysis, we looked at a correlation for permits issued in the last, I believe, 3 years, the correlation of those new residential properties water usage compared to their square footage to determine how much water is used based on square foot. And that allowed us to break down within these square footage sizes. The square foot sizes are also aligned with the city's current impact fee schedule, which may help us in the future if we decide to go down the route of adding in an impact fee. But the square footage sizes acknowledge as well that there are different sizes of dwellings. So this trades off the difference that we had for the condo, the duplex, the mobile home park. Each of those were originally developed to acknowledge that those types of units were usually of a smaller size. So now if we look at homes that are being built, often a townhouse is the same size as a regular single family house. It's just connected by an adjoining wall. So there was no, for our rate purposes, no need to consider them based on those named categories. It made more sense to consider based on the square footage size. And then based on a single family to multifamily, when we did that correlation of water usage to square footage, there is a slightly less water usage for multifamily than there is for single family. And that's why there is a little bit lower fee based on the different square footage sizes from single family to multifamily. So there are trunk fees and treatment fees as well. So same applies. So if a home comes in and it's 700 square feet or less, it would pay $1,285 for the trunk fee and $1,760 for the treatment fee. And then for the commercial fees, there's also a trunk fee, which is replaces the original trunk fee. It's also still charged based on the single family dwelling equivalent. So it'll be $2,224. And then the treatment fees will be updated for flow, BOD, TSS, eventually total nitrogen, and phosphorus is added in as well. So the ammonia fee will be, as I mentioned, transitioned over to total nitrogen eventually. So, and we also have still the equivalent assessment fees, and they will be indexed up as well. The range, the square footage range on those is the same as previous, but they're being indexed based on the cost of service adjustments. So I'll give a couple of examples here. So single family residence. So we just took a category, a 2,250 square foot home. So the existing rate that I mentioned earlier was the $3,575 based on having the trunk and treatment fee combined. And now for a 2,250 square foot home, the updated fee would be $4,661. So one thing to note, we haven't updated our connection fees since 2014. If we would have been updating them annually, even with a 3% annual update, I believe the fee would have been, ironically, $4,664. So would have been pretty close to what we're showing here for the single family residential. And then a multifamily. So we're assuming a 5-unit facility with 1,000 square foot units. So the existing fee for that would be $14,725. With the updated fee, it'd be $16,845. And then last but not least, a customer impact for commercial. So we're assuming a commercial business with about 2,500 gallons per day, roughly just over 6 pounds of BOD daily, 6 pounds of TSS, and 0.6 pounds of ammonia, and 0.14 pounds of phosphorus. So you can see the differential going from the existing fees up to the proposed fees. So that's my presentation for the connection fees. Before I ask for a motion from the commission, I need to answer some questions if there are any.
Thank you, Heather. And I will open it up for questions from the commission. Commissioner Crowley.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Heather, just a couple of questions. The percentage increase to single family units, about 30%, is for the total, the combined total for the charges, the trunk fee and the service. That sounds a little high. I realize it's been 8 years since, apparently it's been 8 years, as I understand it, since those fees have been increased. Is that correct?
Chair, Commission Member Crowley, yes, that's correct.
Okay. Have you had an opportunity to see how people might respond to that kind of an increase, number one? And secondly, are these fees typically billed to the builder of the houses, and then they recover those costs through the sale of the property once it's completed?
Chair, Commission Member Crowley, yes, that's correct. If a builder is building the property, the fee will be charged to that builder. And then when the home sells, then the builder recovers that through the sale of the home. So if you
Okay.
consider the value of the median value of homes right now, I think is, if I remember correctly, about 575,000. So our fee is less than 1% of that.
Okay. And what percentage of the recovery, it's kind of a net cost, as I understand your presentation, you do include or take into consideration the accumulated depreciation reserves in calculating your revenue requirement. Have you annualized the new fees against current fees to see what the difference in revenue recovery is? Applying the new fees to existing customer base and business and comparing that to what has actually been recovered for any historical 12-month period?
Chair, Commission Member Crowley, no, I have not done that type of analysis. I guess we've looked at our historical costs and our basis indexes then to current. I haven't gone back for our investment in the last year into our system and looked at recovery based on that. But the fees are set to recover the investment that we have made, I guess, if that makes sense.
Okay. Thank you, Heather. That's all the questions I had, Mr. Chair.
Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you. I do have a question about the transition from the treatment fee for ammonia to the new metric of total nitrogen. Do you know what that transition is going to look like? I think you said over the next 3 years and the impacts that might have in the interim.
Chair, for that transition, we are doing that over the next 3 years. That's correct. And we need to establish a baseline level for each of our different users of what total nitrogen is. So we'll be doing sampling for each of our major industrial users, especially to see what the combination of total nitrogen is for them over that period of time. So that will give them time as well to transition into that basis as we move forward. And then also for our unmonitored commercial gives us an opportunity to establish that number for each of our different business classes as well. So we know what the ammonia values are, and we've been charging based on ammonia currently. So during that 3-year period, we'll gradually transition over into total nitrogen. So by the end of the 3 years, that will be our basis.
Sure, I'd just add in that we've been talking with those users. They're aware of this transition. We've been giving them a heads up over the last couple of years that we'd like to shift over to total nitrogen. So they're aware of that and starting to prepare, and we're going to continue having those conversations over the coming years.
Awesome. Thank you. Any other? Yes.
Chair Gravel.
Councilmember Bajent. Yes.
Heather, I recall a conversation a couple of months ago that as we drilled in and got deeper into how the fees are calculated, we felt that a more refined calculation would actually shift some of the fee to commercial from residential. And I guess my question is that the reason that the commercial increase or the proposed commercial increase, as we see on this slide, is so much greater than the more modest amount we saw on the residential side?
Chair and Councilmember Bajent, yes, that is the case. So our customers that pay based on the different constituents, they are seeing a bit higher increase. Just when we charge by constituent, it results in a bit higher fee. And it's similar to our O&M fees that, just as you're saying, we anticipated a transition from residential over to the commercial and industrial customers.
Great, that makes sense. And then my second question is, maybe it's just not really a question, but we have this more refined way of looking at the residential fees where we look at square footage instead of dwelling type. And that makes sense. But then on the commercial side, the unit of measurement we're still using is like the single family dwelling equivalent. which is odd because we've said on the residential side, there is no single family dwelling equivalent. We look at square footage. And I want to flag that as something that feels awkward because we're using single family dwelling equivalent to calculate commercial when we're not really using that metric on the residential side at all. And it probably makes sense. And it's just putting air on that bit of oddness I saw.
Chair, Councilmember Bajent, I understand what you're saying. And within the residential side, we still have, there's a established level of what a single family dwelling equivalent is. There's a number of gallons per day and a number of pounds per day for each of the different constituents. So we still can calculate what a residential single family dwelling equivalent amount would be. And so there still is that basis when we translate that over into commercial. So we still have the basis. And you're right, it does maybe feel a little awkward when we're displaying our fees by the square footage and there's not one specifically called out as a single family dwelling equivalent. We still can calculate back to that though, based on the rates that we've established. So it is still there, just not as specifically called out in our rate schedule. So we felt a little awkward as well when we were displaying the fees. So I totally understand what you're saying there, but it is still available and can be calculated.
Okay, that's great. Really, in full candor, Heather, you started the slides with 2 court opinions where cities got sued because people were mad at the rates. And then I was thinking, well, if the commercial people are going to be mad and we're not even using this on single family, maybe we should think about it. And the answer you'd say if you got sued is no, we had a basis, we still use the measurement, here it is. So that's wonderful. Thank you.
Yes, thank you.
All right, any other questions? Commissioner Crowley, you still have your hand up online. I'm not sure if you have another question.
I don't, Mr. Chair, I just neglected to lower my hand.
Chair Gravett, I have a question.
Yes, Commissioner Collette.
Heather, thanks for your presentation. I'm just wondering, again, I understand why, if you haven't increased the rate in so long, we need to increase it. But a 30% hike, when considering the cost of housing right now and inflation, is there a way to ease the blow of that by maybe phasing it over 2 or 3 years so it's a 10%, 10%, 10% versus kind of having this heavy hit all at once?
Chair, Commissioner Member Collette, I think for the connection fees, it's slightly different than the operational fees. Phasing it in, I guess we would maybe stay behind. And I think it would be easier to transition as we're doing today rather than the phasing in. We could consider that. I guess I don't know if I have a better answer there. It's a little bit different than the cost of service shifts that we are doing on the operational fees, where we are shifting over time and everyone was paying the fees at once. In that transition, this is, since it's a one-time fee, doing that transition would mean that people that are connecting now would continue to pay less. And so the transition wouldn't quite work the same as our operational fees.
Gotcha.
Answering quite well.
That does. That does. Thank you.
Thank you.
And Chair, I would just add on, following up on that question. Yes, there is that sense that you're potentially impacting housing affordability, but the flip side of that is that we are trying to make sure that growth is paying for growth. So that's the balance we're trying to walk. But it's a fair point, and we thought about that key issue on affordability. And then as we start looking at the median home cost, and the percent that we make up of that, it's a pretty small increase, relatively speaking. It's still an increase. We definitely appreciate that. But then the flip side is we're trying to account for the growth, paying for growth. And so that's one of the reasons we're trying to move forward with that new fee.
Thank you. Any other questions from the commission?
Chair Gravatt, I'm sorry, I guess I have one more. Is there a reason that we use an 8-inch standard pipe on all of these, like, I assume some developments require a 12-inch pipe or a 14-inch. I don't know what size they come in, but we just use 8 inches for everything. Is there cost that's not being captured because we're doing that? Everybody's looking at the engineer. I'm sorry.
Chair and council member Bajent, I'm not sure, since I'm not in the room, if
I think you're going to
our
get
engineer
bailed
was-
out, Heather. You're good.
Commissioner, Council Member Bajent, thank you for the question. We use the minimum size that you can do in any sort of development is 8-inch. So we use that as a standard. But in the cost, as you pointed out, is they do get larger. So there is a table that kind of allocates the cost and kind of looks at it and kind of distributes that cost accordingly. So again, minimum size 8-inch for any development. That's a state rule, state kind of IDEQ rule. And also that's what we want because you can operate and clean and maintain. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, maybe I misunderstood. I took a note here that says we're charging for certain developments or certain connections, just based on the square area, they get charged for an 8-inch pipe. And my question was, I guess now my question is, do I misunderstand that? And they actually get charged based on the size of the pipe they're actually putting in?
So,
Heather?
yeah, Chair, Councilmember Bajent. So the equivalent assessment fee is assuming the 8-inch pipe, but the other part of the trunk fee. So there's a trunk fee and an equivalent assessment fee. The trunk fee itself considers all sizes of pipe. So regardless of, it starts from 8-inch and goes up to our largest size of pipe. So all of that, those varying costs are included in the trunk fee. The
Okay.
equivalent assessment fee is just for an 8-inch pipe and that 8-inch equivalency, basically. So not to get too far in the weeds of how the fees are calculated, but it is just that portion of the fee schedule is just for the 8-inch, and then the trunk fee captures the larger sizes of pipe.
Okay, so I just misunderstood. Thank you very much.
And about 70% of the system is 8-inch pipe. So
Oh,
I think
okay.
that's why we focus in on that number instead of clouding it with the others.
Fair enough. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, any other questions? All right, hearing none, I'll turn it back over to you, Heather.
Thank you, Chair. So if the commission is comfortable, I would ask for a motion to approve the fees that were presented today and also the detail that was provided in the memo.
All right, and I would entertain a motion should the commission wish to move forward.
Chair Grant,
Yes, Commissioner Ellis.
I move the commission recommend the Public Works staff connection fee schedule as presented today in Appendix A of the memo for approval by the City Council.
We have a motion. Do we have a second?
I second.
A motion and a second. Is there any discussion on the motion? Awesome. I'll just say that I do look forward to updates on the transition on those, on some of the total nitrogen transition as we do move forward. All right. And so with that, all those in favor of the motion, please indicate by saying aye.
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 Any opposed, the same sign? Hearing none, the motion carries.
Okay.
Thank you. All right, and that brings us to the next item on our agenda, an update on water renewal bond issuances. And I will turn it over to staff.
Chair, thank you. And this second item is also going to get covered by Heather. It's just a quick update for the commission on where we are on the bond issuances related to water renewal. So Heather.
Great, thank you. So Chair, Commission members, I briefed you a few months ago on where we were on our fiscal 22 bond issuance. You already know that we held the bond election in November passed with over 80% approval. What it does is allows us to issue up to $570 million of bonds over the next 10 years. So we're planning on doing our market issuance bonds in two what we call tranches. So there will be one in fiscal 22, and we're anticipating the second one to be in fiscal year 2024. We're also working on our WIFIA loan application. So that should be submitted here in the next month and a half to get to the EPA. So that would be the other portion of our bonds. So for the market issuance bonds, we're anticipating using 171 million of that 570. And then we're expecting WIFIA to take up 399 million of the 570. So this first bond issuance for water renewal sets up the framework that we will utilize going forward. Since we haven't issued bonds in the water renewal fund in decades, we have to start with that basic framework and redo everything. So we go through and create what's called a master bond ordinance, and that was approved by City Council recently. So the checklist here are all the various steps. So we went through the bond authorization. We have an underwriter that's helping with this process. We developed that master bond ordinance and also what's called a preliminary official statement. And that preliminary official statement basically tells a market investor all about our fund, our bond, our projects that are included in the bond, all the various details about the water renewal services and the bonds that we're issuing. So we do that official statement. We determine that final sizing of the bond, which we're deciding to issue $80 million of bonds in this first issuance. We receive ratings by our rating agencies. We received last week the review from Moody's, which is an AA2 rating, which is considered excellent for our for a water renewal bond or a sewer bond. It's considered to be a very high rating. We are 1 point below what the city's overall rating is, which is an AA3 rating. So we were feeling a little competitive there, wanting to get the same rating, but it's typical that one of the sub funds of the city would be just a point or so lower than the overall rating. And then next step is finalizing the master bond ordinance and the preliminary official statement. So the master bond ordinance was approved by City Council, I believe on May 17th, if I'm remembering the date correctly. And then that preliminary official statement will be posted out for public to see very shortly, I believe this next week. So investors can start reading that and evaluating the bond itself. And then I believe in 2 weeks, we will be doing the bond pricing. So there's a Federal Reserve announcement for interest rates that's coming up mid-month. And so we're announcing or looking for our bond pricing to happen right after that. So rather than trying to get our bonds priced before and there being question about what that interest rate adjustment from the federal's agencies might be, then we're waiting till after that so that that's known and won't impact the rate that we might receive on our bonds. So once we get the bond pricing, then the execution of that pricing agreement will happen on the end of the month. And we're anticipating that to be on June 30th. So once that's complete, our bonds are issued and we will be receiving those funds. So that's all I have on that. If there are any questions.
Awesome, thank you. Are there any questions on this presentation? All right, hearing none. Thank you, Heather. We will move on to the next item on our agenda, which is the Materials Management 2021 Data Review and Waste Analysis Report. And I will kick it over to staff.
Thank you, Chair. And not that the first two items weren't riveting, but this one in particular is really interesting. I think you're going to find the data sets. I mean, we did going through it, so I think it's going to be a fun presentation. And with that, I'll turn it over to our solid waste program manager, Peter.
Thank you. It'll take me a minute to get this queued up. Hopefully everybody's excited to talk about trash today. It's going to be, we got a lot of data for you, and we really appreciate your time.
I'm always ready to talk trash.
I'm like, come on, the audience here. I mean, come on, you know, I'm excited about it.
I didn't need to be.
Take a break.
Cooperating. I can use. Oh yeah. That. Okay.
All right, are we back in action?
I think we're back in action. Thanks for having us, commissioners, chairman, and councilmember Bajan. As I said, we're going to be talking today about our waste stream here in the city of Boise. We've done a lot of work on analyzing that, and we also did a recently in 2021 did a waste analysis report where we dove deep into what exactly the people in the city of Boise are throwing away. So we have a lot of information. You also have a attachment that we gave you in the agenda that kind of dives in a little bit deeper because there's so much information we couldn't really include it all. And we're also happy to provide the entire report for those of you who would like to go through that at your leisure. So our objectives today, we want to provide a general overview of our current waste streams. So that's the trash, recycling, also composting. After that, we're going to look at the waste stream analysis that we did. That looks in detail at what people are actually throwing away in the trash. So we can look at that and see what other opportunities we have to divert material. We're going to report on some of our successes and challenges in materials management and also discuss some future diversion initiatives that we're looking at. Before we dive into that, I just wanted to mention, we have all these different programs that you're familiar with, whether it's regular recycling, glass recycling, composting, the energy bag, also our household hazardous waste. And we've had those for a while, but they tie in really well with Boise's climate action roadmap. And, our objectives are really the same. We want to reduce the amount of waste that we create here in the city as a whole. And we want to find different and innovative ways to divert those, to reuse them, reuse the materials, and to make the landfill last as long as it possibly can. So just wanted to mention that tie-in. And, we do work with the climate division hand in hand. Just real quick, a quick timeline for some of our major programs. We started commingled recycling in 2009. That was kind of when we started calling it the Curbit program. Glass recycling, 2 different times there in 2002, 2012. We have a curbside glass program and also a drop-off glass program. It's really great because it's recycled locally here and made into a abrasive product. So we're really proud of that. Obviously, our composting program in 2017, great program that diverts the most material in the city right now. Our energy bag program in 2018. And, most recently, we started really trying to look at reduce and reuse program and figuring out ways that we can stop the material from coming in the first place, because we know that that's the most efficient thing to do and the best for the environment. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to, for a couple slides, one of my new staff members, Gabe Brenner. And I just wanted to mention Gabe and Catherine here. They're both new. We have a lot of new staff in materials management, and they did such great work on this, analyzing all the data and coming up with some of these graphs. So wanted to give Gabe the opportunity here to talk about a few of them, and then I will be back.
Good afternoon, and thank you, Peter, Chair, and Commissioners, for allowing me to be here this afternoon to discuss the city's waste and recycling streams. The Public Works Materials Management Team receives monthly data from Republic Services, our franchise waste hauler, on materials taken to the compost facility, Western Recycling, and Ada County Landfill. Our team has analyzed the data from calendar year 2021, and in some cases compared it to previous years. The following slides highlight this data and provide a more general overview of Boise's current waste streams. The graph I'd like for all of you to look at first is the graph on the left, which shows the residential material trends from 2015 to 2021, compared to the city of Boise's population growth notated by that dotted line, which we received from Compass. As Boise's population has increased over the past 7 years, overall waste tonnage has remained steady, with a slight increase in 2020. However, the composition of the waste stream has changed over time. Yearly trash tonnage, notated by the black line there, has decreased from about 88,000 tons in 2015 to approximately 65,000 tons in 2021, representing an approximate 30% decrease over time. With the introduction of the curbside compost program in 2017, compost is notated by the green line there, the overall residential waste diversion rate has increased from 13% in 2015 to 42% in 2021. However, the amount of waste in the recycling stream has stayed steady over the years, or relatively steady, presenting an opportunity for increased education and engagement in this program area. The graph on the right shows residential curbside waste tonnages and percentages for 2021 in more detail. We've essentially taken that 2021 graph and just blown it up for you all to see there. The recycling section includes energy bag program participation. However, that was rolled into the blue line there. The tonnages for the energy bag are a little bit too small to accurately see on that graph. However, approximately 324 tons of energy bags were shipped to end markets in 2021. Next, I want to compare commercial and residential waste tonnage over time. This graph compares the residential and commercial, waste trends from 2015 to 2021. The commercial lines are notated by the dotted lines, and the residential is the solid lines. You can see that commercial does not have a dotted green line, as there is no commercial compost program. Like the residential recycling stream, commercial recycling tonnages have remained steady over time. Those blue lines down there, relatively low. However, residential trash tonnages are generally declining, while commercial trash tonnages have increased 2015 to 2016, plateaued a little bit in 2019, and have decreased slightly in 2020 and 2021. One thing to note here is that in 2021, commercial trash accounted for over 40,000 more tons per year than residential trash, presenting another opportunity for increased engagement with our business community here. Just a little clarification for this commission. Residential here is single family homes, duplexes, and triplexes. They have that compost access. Commercial is really everything else. It's businesses, multifamily, condos, apartments, anything that has 4 or more residential units, we consider commercial. So this graph here displays the percentage by weight of recycling material collected at Western Recycling for the entire Treasure Valley. Please note this is not Boise specific. Western Recycling, collects material from the entirety of the Treasure Valley. As you can see here, cardboard makes up the greatest percentage, about 45%, followed by paper, which is about 35%. Over years, the percentage of cardboard increased by 9 percentage points from 2019 to 2021, while paper has decreased 10 percentage points over the same time frame. I have a graph showing that for you in the next slide. One of the items I wanted to point your attention to is that black line there, or the black triangle. That's our trash or contamination rate. While 11% contamination rate is generally considered pretty good in the industry, with top tier cities like Portland having a 9 to 10% contamination rate, trash contamination is still the 3rd largest category in our waste, in our recycling stream. So again, another opportunity for engagement with our citizens and our business community on getting back to the basics of what goes where and how to reduce those contaminants from going into the blue bin. And again, just getting back to those more dramatic changes in our recycling mix here in our commodities, you could see that plastic, mixed metal, trash, they're relatively the same from 2019 to 2021. Unfortunately, we don't have commodity mix data before this time, but I wanted to draw your attention to paper and cardboard. Paper has been declining from 2019 to 2021. And then cardboard, it almost looks like cardboard is just taking up that space where paper left, increasing considerably to about 45% of our commodity mix here in 2021. Thank you again for giving me the opportunity, Chair and Commissioners, for presenting the Republic Services monthly data for you. And now I'm going to turn it back to Peter to go over our waste stream analysis that we did in 2021. Thank you. You're gonna need that.
Maybe before Gabe takes up, any questions from the commission before Peter jumps back in?
Are there any questions so far?
I have some questions.
Yes,
Um,
Commissioner Ellis.
Thank you. I was curious, why did we start at 2015? Was it just good to have it 3 years before the 2017 of when compost started?
Sure. Yeah, I can answer that question. Thank you, Commissioner Ellis and Chair. We wanted to look back, but we didn't want to look back too far in the data to where we're not looking at sort of modern times and modern data. Also, the data gets a little fuzzier back the longer you go, not quite as reliable. So we didn't want to go too far back, and we wanted to compare apples to apples, so to speak. And so we had to choose something. We didn't want to go too far.
Okay, I have a couple more.
Sure.
What are all the cities then that Western takes in?
Sure. Yeah. Western Recycling takes in all the cities in the Treasure Valley. They also import some of their recycling from the Magic Valley. The Magic Valley materials should not be included in that material in the graphs there, but it is all of the communities that have recycling in the Treasure Valley.
So Meridian, Nampa, Caldwell, Boise,
Garden City, yeah,
Garden. Okay.
absolutely.
And then did you have ideas of why the cardboard went up and paper went down? I have ideas that come to mind immediately. But I
Yeah.
wondered if you even have more, as I figured with paper, we're not printing as much, newspapers almost gone. But cardboard is all of the ordering online and having packages delivered.
Absolutely.
Is that
that's exactly what we think. Obviously, that's just, we don't have necessarily hard data to back that up, although we do show later here when we look at the paper stream specifically, we show how much newspaper has decreased. And the fact of the matter is, like you stated, there's a lot of people getting materials delivered to them, whether that's groceries, whether that's Amazon, and it only increased during the COVID years. And so, cardboard's huge, and it's definitely going to be one of our focus points in the coming years. Is how do we make sure we get that cardboard and it's being recycled? Because as you'll see here in the next couple of slides, there's a lot of cardboard that we aren't getting for various reasons.
Thank you.
Commissioner Crowley.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Question I had was regarding the 11% trash or contaminated portion of the recycled materials. Is there any breakdown of what is in that 11%? Is there something that's more prevalent than other materials that might be contaminants that are showing up in the recycling bins?
Thank you, Commissioner Crowley, Chair. That's a great question. We have that data. It's not, we don't have it displayed right here. I do know that in talking with Western Recycling and their manager there, the number one thing that they don't want, and it might not be by weight, but the number one thing that causes them issues in the recycling stream is plastic bags. There's a variety of reasons for that. A lot of people put their recycling in a plastic bag, which we don't want. We want it to be loose. And I think that's an opportunity that we can, really drive that home to people. And one of the reasons the plastic bags are so tough for Western is they get caught up in their machinery that's sorting the recycling, and sometimes causing them to shut that down. So if there's one thing that we would want to focus on there, it would be plastic bags. And we've been told that time and time again. It may not be the highest weight wise, like I said, that's in that 11%, but it's the one that causes the most issues. And we're happy to get you a breakdown of that 11%. I don't have that right on me at the time at this moment.
Okay, thank you. That's very helpful. I was noticing the little poster that's on top of the recycling bins, and I haven't looked at it recently, but I don't recall seeing plastic bags specifically mentioned on it or shown on it. I was wondering, is there anything that can be done to try and reduce that 11%?
Sure, we definitely want to focus on some of the no's as well as what can go in the bin, because what we find is that there's a lot of people that, sort of wishful recycle, as they call it. And they're like, well, if it doesn't say this, I kind of hope that we can recycle it, and they put it in there. So calling out no plastic bags, a variety of other things that we don't want, no glass, we wanted that to be separated, is definitely something we want to do. And we are updating those stickers to include the no's.
Thank you.
Chair, I have
Any
a
other questions? Yes, go ahead.
Yes, I have a question. In one of the graphs that was shown, it showed 2015, and then there was a huge spike in commercial usage. And I just wanted to know if there's any explanation on that. If you don't know and speculate, that's totally fine as well. But I was just wondering why there was such a dramatic increase.
Thank you. Is this the slide you're referring to?
Yes.
Yeah, thank you. I do not have an answer to that question. I'll be honest. I mean, it definitely could have been some of the growth in the valley when it comes to commercial entities, businesses that were coming in. But I don't have a specific answer as to why that tonnage increased from, say, 100,000 to 125,000 or so, 130,000 there. My guess would be growth, but then, that doesn't explain why it flattens there from 2018, 2019. Can't blame it all on COVID, even though we like to do that.
Dovetailing off my previous question, I know there's a lot of efforts being targeted toward residential programs or residential homes to curb the amount of waste that they're inputting into the system, but are there also efforts I haven't seen efforts for commercial usage? Like specifically, I can think of like apartment units that would be incredibly helpful, but I know that tends to be problematic as well with the amount of people that are in a similar, like the same space.
Commissioner, thank you for that question, and Chair, great question, and definitely something that we're focused on. We just finished the business and multifamily website addition to curb it, and we have great staff now, Gabe and Catherine and others that we're actually offering businesses and multifamily the ability. We'll go out to their business and work with them and help them to try to find ways that they can reduce their waste. And some of this data that we're going to talk about here goes into like specific businesses and what waste they created. And when you see it, you'll be shocked about how much of certain specific types of waste they create. And so we found that to be just a great opportunity to go out there and talk to them about it and say, okay, how can we help you either reduce the amount of waste that you're creating, find a way to divert it, or, start different programs that might be able to address it.
Okay. And I think that's all for now.
Chair Gravatt.
Yes.
One more quick question on the paper cardboard thing, and it might be one to come back with. Do the tonnage numbers track the percentage numbers? Because if cardboard goes up by 60%, then something else has to come down, right? So even if the amount of paper going into the system is exactly the same, a bunch more cardboard goes up, then because it's on a percentage basis, the other percentages have to come down. And so I just wonder if the tonnage data of what's actually going in shows paper going down as well as cardboard going up, or if it's more paper's flat and there's just a ton more cardboard in the system now. And so that's what creates the percentage difference.
Councilmember Bajan, thank you for the question. I would say it's actually both. You're right that the percentages, the percentage would have to shift if there's, a change in one commodity and another commodity. But we have seen the actual tonnages of paper, newsprint, and what they call mixed paper, which is just all the other kind of papers. We have seen those tonnages go down, and we have seen the tonnages of cardboard go up.
This despite the mailings we get from Suez every month about our water line insurance.
Oh, I'm actually trying to fight off purchasing that, but I don't know. Maybe I should. I don't know.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions?
Any others? I'm not seeing any, so take it away.
Great, thank you. So just to differentiate what data we're going to discuss now, the data we just went over, talked about all of our different waste streams sort of in a general way. This data in the waste stream analysis that we did in 2021, it's just looking at trash, right? So it's looking at what people throw away. And then the whole point of it is to try to look at that data and figure out what we can do with what people are throwing away and what opportunities that we have to divert it or to reduce the amount of waste in the first place. As I mentioned before, there's a lot of information here, and we do have a handout that kind of that you can refer to dive deeper. So the objectives of this waste stream analysis is to provide data on the composition and the quantity of what materials are disposed of in Boise. As I mentioned, we provide that data, and it's used for future planning. We used best industry standard practice to complete this analysis with a consultant. And just to talk quickly about the limitations, obviously there's a lot of trash that's being created, and we took as many samples as we could over seasonally, quarterly over the whole year, right? But it's still an estimate. So if you see like a difference of a percentage or two between something, don't take that as being like a lot. It could be within the margin of error there. So the methodology for the waste stream analysis, as I mentioned, it was conducted by Green Solutions, a company that does this exclusively out of Washington State. And City of Boise and Republic Services shared costs for the analysis. And it examined residential and commercial waste that goes through the Boise transfer station. So transfer station is where about 75% of our waste goes. Republic Services takes their trucks there, transfers it onto a larger truck that then goes to the landfill. And it was conducted quarterly, as I mentioned, in 2021. The reason we do it quarterly is to adjust for seasonal variations in the waste stream. So the loads of waste that came into the transfer station, they're divided into 5 generator categories that you see here. Those are defined in a little bit greater detail on your handout in case you have any questions. They're fairly self-explanatory: single family, multifamilies, 4 units or more, Mixed commercial is mainly just businesses that have dumpsters. Maybe it's downtown, maybe it's outside of town. Commercial compactors are larger businesses that buy their own compactors and are serviced separately. So you only have one truck per compactor. And then construction and demolition waste is obviously there are temporary containers for construction and also for demolition. About 20 samples were done from each category, and they break those categories down into 8 broad waste categories and 70 subcategories. So here's a look at the broad categories of waste. Obviously these are done by weight as mentioned previously. So if you look at the graph there, you can see we have 3 categories that make up almost 60% of the waste stream, that being organics, paper, and wood, and construction and demolition. So we can look at those in a little bit more detail, and we will in the coming slides. One thing that we noticed right away, the largest subcategories of these larger broad categories were food waste. That's part of organics there, and that was 17.4% of organics. So that jumped out at us right away as an opportunity where there's a lot of food waste in the waste stream. Also, construction wood, that was 12% of that wood and C&D category. And then our course cardboard that we were talking about previously, that was about 8.5% of the paper category. So we can see there when you start diving into this a little bit more, where we want to focus some of our efforts to divert material. Some of those materials we can divert now, and we just need people to start doing it. Some of them we don't have an opportunity for, but that we could build a program and try to get those opportunities available to people. Some of their notable subcategories, non-recyclable paper was 7%. So, you think of paper as all one thing, but some paper we can't recycle, especially things like frozen food containers or things like that. So, because they have a plastic coating on them. So some of that paper category is, off the table. It's not like we could get all of it, even if we wanted to. There was also about 6% or 5.5% of plastic bags and film in that plastics category of 13%. There was about 5% mixed paper. Yard debris was only 3.5%, which we're happy about. Happy to see that, and that our compost program is taking care of most of the yard debris. Textiles were at about 3.5%. It doesn't seem like much, but it's something where, we really want to make sure people understand that a lot of textiles, depending on their condition, can either be reused and try to see if there's other opportunities for us to divert that material. Now we're going to look a little deeper at some of these large categories that we were just speaking about. As I mentioned, organics, we've seen the yard debris decrease from 24% in 2014 to about 7% in 2021. That's for single family homes only. So we still have some yard debris in there. We have a great participation rate in our composting program, about 97%, but there is still some people who don't participate. And of course, some people who just maybe, put a little bit of overflow in there if their organics cart's full and they don't have bags or something. Food waste, mentioned this before, it accounted for 20% or more of the total waste in all but one generator category. So the only category that it didn't show up at that rate was construction and demolition, which you'd expect. You wouldn't expect to see much food waste in there, but all the other categories, it's showing up at 20% or more. So we're really, really thinking about that and thinking about ways to help with that. Food waste is a little bit lower in single family versus multifamily category, which you'd expect to see since the single family has the ability to at least divert some of their food waste, the fruits and vegetable waste, in our composting program. And paper, as we were talking about. So 20% of the overall waste stream, 8.3% cardboard, about 5% mixed paper. And there's that newspaper, it's only 0.1%, which I just found shocking. I still like to read the physical New York Times, but apparently nobody else does. So it's really changed, and the recycling system was set up to handle newspaper, and now it's going to have to be set up to handle cardboard. One of the things we struggle with cardboard is people breaking down the boxes. They won't break them down, and so you have these containers, whether it's a dumpster or whether it's your container at your house, and it's basically full of air because there's like a bunch of cardboard boxes that aren't broken down, and then people say they don't have any space. So we really want to try to get people to break that cardboard down. It just makes it more efficient for our collection system, and hopefully, keeps costs in check. Commercial compactors had an average of 20% cardboard, 20%. So that was shocking to me. I thought it would be high, but I didn't think it would be that high. So it goes back to working with businesses to make them realize, hey, you have an opportunity here to get this cardboard out of the waste stream. We have recycling for it. We don't have to start a new program for it. We just have to get people to take the time to break it down and put it in a different container. Our recycling rates are lower than our trash rates, so there's an incentive. I think, when we get out there and start talking to these businesses, I think they'll be actually happy to figure out a way that we're going to help them do this. Construction demolition waste, 18.5% of the total waste stream. You can see there some of the breakdown of that. 32% wood, 11% sheetrock or gypsum board, 10% carpeting and padding, and then some of the remainders there. The good news with C&D, there's a couple good news stories there. We've worked on a partnership with Planning and Development Services for the demolition ordinance, where we're requiring some recycling from demolition. So that's been going well. We have over 11,000 tons that we've diverted there. And then we also have the ability to recycle that wood and the gypsum. And we recently created a rate for that material. They can mix them together, the wood and the gypsum. And the rate's lower, actually almost half as much as trash. So there's incentive there. We just need to promote that, and we need to help these construction companies figure out a way to train their people that are on the construction site to separate correctly and make sure that they have some space for additional containers. So it basically becomes a logistical issue that we're going to try to help them with, but the opportunity is there. And then plastic. One of the really good things that we saw in this study was only 1.4% of the all the generators waste was recyclable plastic bottles, the 1 and 2 bottles and jars that we do accept in the recycling program. So that was good to see. It's good to see that people are recycling those fairly well. We didn't see a significant change in the total amount of plastics in the single family waste stream from 2014. It was only about a 2 or 3% difference. So it's not increasing a lot. It's not decreasing a lot. Of course, we'd like to see it decrease. And despite the light weight of plastic bags and films, we discussed how those are really a problem for our recycling program. There's still a fair amount of those in the plastic waste in the waste stream, and you can see there the totals, 6 to 9%, depending on the waste category. So that's something we want to try to work on too. I mean, we do have the energy bag program, and people do participate in that. But we can try to get more people to participate, and we really want to get people to try to figure out ways to create less plastic films and bags in the first place, and really work with businesses to help them try to set up ways that they can have reusable bags and do different things, that they're not giving out all this plastic waste. It's like when you go to a restaurant and they give you all this extra plastic forks and everything just automatically. And we want to try to stop that and say, hey, don't give that out automatically, right? Like, let's think of different ways that we can do that. Think of different ways where you can provide a container that they can bring back, whether it's coffee or food or what have you. So that's not easy. I'm not going to lie, because you have all the health regulations there that you have to deal with, but we're still gonna work with people, and we'll still tackle it, one by one, and figure out ways that we can reduce that. So here's the individual compactors, and that's a picture of one right there on the back of the truck. You can see it's a large container. They pick it up individually and take that to the landfill. Grocery stores, other large companies and manufacturing plants use these. So you can see here, grocery stores and a corrections facility. Look at the totals of food waste. 71% at a grocery store. Cardboard in the trucking company and the furniture store, 40 to 95% cardboard. I mean, you think about that furniture store, it's like they basically could almost have no trash. They just need to handle it a different way, right? And so this is what we're talking about with going out there and engaging those customers and working with them to try to figure out, okay, we know you can do this. We have it available. Let's do it. You can see the plastics there, and then textiles, as you would expect at a thrift store. So one of the other things that this shows us is that, unlike residential trash, that's sort of it's basically the same whether you're at my house or at one of your houses. Businesses are all different, so it's a little harder to handle than we can't do a one-size-fits-all program and be like, here's a program for all you businesses when they have such different waste streams. So that's why we're going to work with them individually, and I think there's great opportunity there, but it'll take more time because we can't just treat them all as one, all in the same, right? So next steps in planning, really the point of all this data is, well, it's fun to look at, but we have to do something with it. And so when we look at the data, we want to say, okay, what can we do next, and what opportunities do we have? So always we want to make sure we're focusing on outreach and education and making sure the public understands our current programs. We can do this now through renewed in-person events. You can see these pictures here. That's Gabe and Catherine at the Watershed's Earth Day event, which went great. They said that they were talking to kids the entire 4 hours. So these in-person events are great. It's great for the community, and we have all these other opportunities to working with the schools, social media. We're going to be doing some more surveys and challenges to really kind of engage the public and get them interested. And Curbit Pros, I think we have a Curbit Pro alumni on the commission. We want to do that again. It was great. We get these volunteers, we teach them up on all of the fun data, all of the fun ins and outs of solid waste, and then they go to their neighborhoods and their community, and they engage them and they teach them, and it's just a great way to spread the word. So we want to do that again now that I hope we're on the backside of COVID, although I don't know anymore. But we're still planning on doing that. We'll refine our current programs as we talked about. We want to divert more cardboard, plastic film reduction, encourage the full use of the composting program, make sure people are using that for the food waste that they can, reduce plastic bag contamination. Definitely working with special events and internal city events. We have some draft policies that we have made and passed on to climate that they're probably going to include in some of their policies, where we I don't want to say force, but we make it a requirement for certain events that you can't just be passing out hundreds of plastic cups that can't ever be recycled. We think we can do better than that. So we're working on that policy. And then the new and emerging opportunities that we have, commercial food waste. We talked about how much of the waste stream is food waste. So we want to work on reduction and diversion of that food waste. We're working on some code changes that will allow commercial organics to be collected by not just our current franchise hauler, but other entities that want to compete in that area. And one of the reasons we think that's great is because, as we mentioned, there's different business waste is so different. So you might have say a grocery store that creates this type of waste, but then you have like a small restaurant that creates different kinds of waste. And we can't do a one size fits all. So we want to have more opportunities for those businesses. And there might be a small business that can start up in Boise that can collect from smaller entities. And then the big entities can be handled by the larger corporations or so forth. So we want to open that up and make sure that there's opportunities there to divert that, since we know it's such a large percentage of our waste. Construction and demolition waste, I already touched on that. We have the demolition ordinance with PDS, and then we have a construction waste recycling program that we really were going to start promoting and working on trying to get that wood and sheetrock out of the waste stream. And then business and multifamily outreach, have a new website, part of the Curbit website, and make sure you take a look at that. It'll detail what we're doing for businesses. And if you know people with businesses that are interested in waste management or that want to reduce their waste, let them know, send them to that website, and we'll come out and work with them. And last but not least, this all sort of plays into our strategic planning process, our solid waste strategic planning. So as we refine and analyze this data and look at those different opportunities, we're going to be working with a consultant to develop a solid waste strategic plan that'll look ahead 10 years and look at some of the big opportunities that we may have to reduce waste, to divert waste. We want to focus on local solutions such as glass recycling and composting, where if we are diverting materials, we try to keep it as close to home as possible to create jobs and businesses and just for the environmental benefits there. Gather public input and look at, if we are going to start new programs, what are those costs, and make sure that we're starting programs that are going to divert the most waste possible, the most bang for your buck, because we are sensitive to rate increases, and we don't want to start a program that isn't going to divert that much waste and cost a lot of money, obviously. So we're looking at all those things, and we're really excited about it, and I will stand for more questions. Thank you.
All right, I'll open it up for questions if anybody has any.
Chair Gravatt, I have several.
Yes, go ahead, Commissioner Collette.
Thank you. That was a really good presentation. A couple comments. So I'm in the construction industry. I think in terms of, you made a comment about, tight spaces and not having the space for more dumpsters. But I think it's also got a lot to do with cost and how much it costs to have those dumpsters on site. So if there was, and maybe this already exists or is going to exist, but if there was some sort of incentive where if contractors were going to be recycling and separating out their materials on site, that they had some type of incentive, they had free dumpsters or reduced cost dumpsters for able to do that. I think ultimately that's what would drive any change on a construction site, because I think the owners of the company can have an idea of what they think it should be, but ultimately the guys on site are going to be driven by cost. So if we can find a way to reduce that cost for them or give them money back, I think it'll help. And my next idea is maybe not terribly feasible, but I think about how successful the composting program has been, and we've gotten people to separate because there's something in the end for them, right? They get free compost. Like, yes, lots of people do it because it's the right thing to do, but also a lot of people do it because they get something back. So I wonder if there isn't a way that, especially with, again, the cost of materials right now, if we could find a way to separate out some of that construction waste and have it open and available for the public to just come and pick up for free, right? If they could come and I'm sure that there'd be safety issues or health issues, but they could come and pick up pieces of wood or drywall, whatever little projects they had at home. I don't know if it would be feasible long term or if there'd be enough interest to make it viable, but I could see that being something that would be of interest. And then my third comment would be the offices and recycling. I think maybe targeting cleaning companies might help. I just know in our office, for example, we separate everything out, and I've been there after hours and the cleaning crew comes in and they just dump it all in the same bags anyway. And so perhaps some sort of outreach or incentive for cleaning companies to make sure that they're actually separating and recycling would probably be more effective than outreach to specific offices. But maybe that's just an isolated experience for me.
Chair, Commissioner, thank you for those three questions. I'll start with the last two because they're new ideas and I really like them both. I don't know how feasible they are either, but I really like the idea. I mean, we really want to focus on reusing more than recycling, right? So, your example with the wood and perhaps even sheetrock, I don't know, where people could use that material as opposed to us hauling it and then recycling it. It's a better use, it's a higher use, and it reduces the environmental impact of those materials immediately. So love the idea. We'll look into it, see if any other cities are doing it. I'm not sure. And then your comment about the cleaning crews is a good one. We have seen where cleaning crews aren't, they're separated, right? They're not part of the, they're a contractor, so they're not part of the office, so to speak. So the office does their job, but then we need to make sure the cleaning crews are doing their job. So I love that idea. Perhaps it's something we could build into our business outreach as we talk to, some of the larger cleaning companies in town and ask them what we can do to help and can we educate their staff, what have you. So those are great, both of those ideas. Back to your first point on the incentivizing for the construction and demolition waste, we do. I agree with you. It comes down to money for a lot of businesses. Some of them will do it because it's the right thing to do, but a lot of them, they need to compete and they can't do that if they're charging a lot more money. Our current rate for that recyclable wood and gypsum board is quite a bit lower. I'm gonna say at least 30% lower than the trash rate. So we do have an incentive there. I think one of the barriers, however, is the time it takes for those construction workers to separate the materials. It really doesn't take a lot of time, but you have to educate each person. You have to educate the subcontractors, and then you have to have a second container on site. So we've done a pilot program with ESI Construction. They've been able to do it. It took them a little while, and they had a lot of contamination at first, and then they slowly got better. So I think there's some barriers there when it comes to time and education, but I think that our rate structure is such that it's actually is incentivizing it.
Sorry, and then just to follow up to that, in terms of dumpster rental, though, if you could get all of your, let's assume you could get all of your trash into one container, and that's what people are doing. But if we're asking them to separate, they're having to rent a separate dumpster. Is the cost of that additional dumpster to separate going to nullify the benefits of having a cheaper rate to drop the materials off?
Sure. I think I get what you're talking about. And I guess it would depend on how long the construction project was taking and how much material they're diverting. So we did just recently get smaller construction containers down to 10 yards. We used to only have 20 yards. And part of that is, so if you only have a little bit of recycling, you could get that cheaper, smaller container, use that, still have a big one for your trash, or vice versa. But I think there's still an incentive there, but you're right. You still have to pay for the delivery of the other container, right? And the rent. But the rent is included in the rate. So I think there's still an incentive, but I do understand your concern, and we'll definitely look at that.
Thank you. And again, it's just good to know, because I wasn't aware that those things are happening. So I'll check in with all my projects and make sure the guys are aware that they have incentives.
Yeah, thank you very much, Commissioner, and we really appreciate that. And if you need additional information on it, and we're happy to help.
Thank you.
Awesome. I've got a question on the offer to work individually with local businesses. Sort of, what does the program look like? How long has it been running, and what's been sort of the reception so far among organizations that have or have not taken advantage of the offer?
Chair, Commissioner, thank you for the question. The program is really new, I would say within the last 3 months, but we've already made some progress with some businesses throughout the city. One of them that we just finished doing, and Gabe and Catherine actually went out there, was to the Boise Town Square Mall. We met the Boise Town Square Mall manager out at when we were doing the opening of the bench that was made out of the energy bags and the buy blocks. So that was kind of cool. He was there for that. And then we started talking to him, and we went out, staff went out and evaluated their facility. Really what we want to gain from it is have a conversation with them, understand what waste they're creating, what opportunities there are to divert that waste or to stop that waste from occurring in the first place. Then we write up a brief report for them that summarizes our recommendations. And we let them kind of look at that and see, like, okay, like we separate it out in hard, medium, easy, so they can kind of see what they want to do. We give them a little time to talk to whether it's their corporate people or the people that they work with, and say, okay, what do we want to tackle? And then we re-engage them and say, okay, like, how can we help you? Which ones do you guys want to work on? And we go from there. So that's kind of how the process works. But we're still refining it because, as I said, it's so new. So if there's any suggestions of any input from the commission on different ways we could do it or things we could add on, we're happy to listen.
Awesome. Yeah, I've got a million ideas, and I'd be happy to follow up with them. They're maybe not exactly for recycling programs, but I know that there are a number of other programs that do recognize particularly local businesses served by various levels of government with like a badging system or something like that, to recognize folks who do make efforts to achieve a certain shared goal. So that may be one thing to explore as well, looking at sort of the timeline of the waste loads over the past couple of years. And then trying to think back to one of the earlier slides, the timing of when particular programs were started or really ramped up, I'd be interested in seeing what sort of program designs and what sort of outreach mechanisms may have aided in the sort of leveling, especially of commercial waste, even as our population continued to grow, because that seems sort of asynchronous with what we would expect to see. So looking at what we have been doing over the past couple of years, maybe to feed into that, to inform this 3-month-old nascent outreach program.
Thank you, Commissioner and Chair. We have thought about several different ways that we could sort of recognize businesses for their efforts. I know different cities and communities have, sort of like award programs for like, oh, you've reduced your waste this much or what have you. And I think a great way to start is to recognize the people who are engaging with us and trying to do something about it. There's give them an A for effort, right? If people don't try, it's not going to happen. So I like that idea. I think it's something that we've been discussing for a few years, haven't gotten to do it yet, but I like the idea, and it's definitely something we'll continue to look into. And your other comment, I'm sorry, if you could reiterate that, did you want more input on why the commercial waste sort of flatlined during certain periods and why, like what programs may have had an effect on that?
I wasn't soliciting any particular kind of feedback. I was just sort of thinking out loud about that trend through the filter of some of the programs that were outlined in the timeline in one of the earlier slides, and how those might sort of be correlated, as a correlation was pointed out in the initiation of the composting program, and some of the reductions potentially of the residential waste. Sure, yeah, and that's definitely something we can look into. And I also didn't mention that we'll from now on we'll be doing the first part of this every year, which was the look at all those different waste streams, and then we also plan to do another detailed waste analysis. We're hoping at least every 5 years. It's not that expensive. It was about $60,000, and Republic helped us pay for half of it, as I said. And so our plan is to really keep going with this, and then we'll be able to see those trends a little better in time. Can't wait. Any other questions? Commissioner Ellis.
Thank you. I was thinking about the last time I remember the waste components were published. Was it 2016? Because it helped kind of give you guys, trying to think of a different word that's coming in my head, but good reasons of why to do the compost program. So were you able to look at those two? Because I was thinking in the Curbit program, they were saying it was 40% organics, I think, is what is going through my head is the way, and now it's 20. So it's huge. And were you thinking, yeah, that kind of tracks, or, oh, we were really hoping it'd be 10? And I just was curious looking at those two.
Sure. Thank you for the question, Commissioner Ellis, Chairman. It was 2014 when there was another waste stream analysis done. However, that waste stream analysis was done for all of Ada County. It was done by the landfill. And so there was some Boise specific waste that was broken out from that data. However, it's a smaller data set. And so therefore it's, just by nature, less accurate, right? So we put this is the first time we've done a waste analysis just on Boise waste. So the 40%, I think it was like 43% that you're talking about, that is from the 2014 data. It's just not quite as reliable because the data set's so much smaller because we're only a portion of it. but you're absolutely right that it decreased, and it decreased dramatically, the organics there. So we were gonna draw some more comparisons to 2014, but we felt like it might be, a little bit of like, we want this to be our starting point, and we want to continue to do Boise specific waste stream analysis, so we have a little bit more confidence in that data, and we don't want to draw too many parallels to 2014 data. I'm not saying it's completely inaccurate. I'm just saying that the new data is much better.
Had you done it before too, where you knew it was single fan, or you had the 6 different input streams? I don't know if you did that last time either.
No, thank you for the question, Commissioner. You're correct. In 2014, the only 2 categories that they were able to separate out because of the smaller data set was single family and commercial. So they didn't do multifamily or C&D or things like that, or compactors. So that was another reason why it was a little difficult to kind of compare that 2014 to this data. So we're really happy with it's great to get all the county data and look at it as a whole, but when you're making programs for a city, we think it's important to get our own data.
Thank you.
Sherry,
Yeah.
I had a question.
Yes, go ahead.
So I think it's most important that we mitigate the amount of trash that we're putting into the system and amount of waste that we're putting into the system. But while that's a larger, more policy-based issue, is there room for expansion of the capacity of the recycling and other systems that we have currently?
Commissioner Chair, yeah, thank you for that question. There is definitely room for expanding the capacity of recycling and composting program. One of the things we just got finished with was expanding the composting facility. We had run out of room already at the composting facility, and we're having to take that compostable material and give it to another composter. So now we've expanded it almost 40% area wise. And so we have enough room to keep taking in, with the growth in the valley, keep taking in more of that material. The recycling we have less control over because it's handled by a private company, but they aren't maxed out, so they can take more recycling, right? We just need to get people to understand what materials it is they can recycle and make sure that they're recycling all that they can, right? Like the examples with businesses and even residents who might not break down their cardboard boxes, and then they run out of room and they just take their recycling and put it in the trash, right? So I think there's definitely room for expansion in both of those areas.
Thank you. And I have a follow-up to that.
I was just going to add, Chair, sorry to interrupt. Moving forward, the focus we'd like to shift to is reduce and reuse. So part of it is, yes, recycling is a good thing generally, right? We want to have those programs available, but Peter and the team have kind of educated me moving forward on, the question is expansion of recycling good? It's a good question, because you're enabling folks to continue to use material that if we could get earlier in the cycle and have them as almost like efficiency, right? And reduce and reusing rather than producing another material for us to handle, that might be a better outcome. That's a policy question that we're going to bring back to you all in the coming year as we start working our way through the strategic plan. So.
Okay, that's helpful. Thank you. And then I do have a follow-up question. You mentioned wishful recycling. Is there a way to, yes, it's good to expand the capacity, but is there a way to, I know it's through a private company that does the recycling, but is there a way to expand that to include the wishful recycling wannabes?
Commissioner, thank you for that question. That's a great question. The short answer is no. The recycling is a business, right? Like any other business. And so we look at them as commodities, right? There's recycling commodities. So they're going to take the materials that have a value that they can sell, right? To people that are going to turn them into other materials. A lot of the materials that they don't accept, it's either because they don't have a high enough value, or they're materials that are a combined material, like I mentioned, where it's paper and a layer of plastic, right? That's fused to it. In that case, it costs the cost to try to tear that apart, each one, and separate it into paper and plastic is far too high for them to make any money off. And in fact, they'd lose a lot of money, right? And so therefore they don't take those materials. So they're looking at it from a business standpoint. And so they accept the materials that have value, that have a market for recycling.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
So I'm noodling through a similar thread. So as we do move into preventing things from entering into the waste stream in the first place, as we look at this report, are there any areas that you might say are particularly problematic, or are we too early in our measurements to get a real baseline to identify any particular kind of waste, or any particular kind of waste coming from a particular kind of producer is particularly problematic? That's a lot of particulars, but I'm the sort of thread that the needle that I'm trying to thread is a lot of the ideas we're discussing around this new approach are a lot of carrot. And once we have a baseline, I wonder if we are gathering that baseline with a particular attention or an openness to the possibility of at what point do we bring in a stick?
Sure.
And that could be a question for 3 years from now.
Yeah, Chairman, Commissioners, yeah, thank you for that question. The carrot versus the stick. Yeah, we have been, historically, more of carrot people, I will say. We might have been rabbits in our old life, but the stick has a place, and I think that the first time I've been here for about 13 years, and actually it's longer than that, but the first time I've seen, and it was just last year, where we working with PDS, collaborating with them, we passed the demolition ordinance. And that's the first time that you're actually required to recycle certain materials. So, and I think that's the direction you were talking about, where you say, like, instead of saying, boy, we'd really like to have you do this, we say, sorry, you're not allowed to do that anymore. And that'll be up to, guidance from the commission and from council as to what they'd like to see. And we're definitely open to that.
Yeah. And as we're looking into the next couple of years and focusing a lot more on some of these more regular metrics, I would appreciate some potentially some possibilities that we could explore down the road should any problematic trends arise, because we can only lower the barrier so far before we expect people to pursue the pathway.
Chairman, Commissioner, thank you. Yeah, and I agree. And back to your previous comment, and we definitely see areas of focus that we want to focus on, and such as the food waste, the cardboard, and whatnot. And we want to look at that, like Steve said, from the reduced perspective too, as to like why is there so much cardboard? Is there ways to stop that from coming in the first place, instead of just being like, okay, we're going to recycle it? And then why is there so much food waste? We'd much rather see people eating that food than taking it and turning it into compost or doing something else with it, right? So those are complicated measures to try to enact, but it doesn't mean that we're not going to try.
Awesome, thank you. Any other questions? Commissioner Ellis.
I'm just going to ask one last one. The reduce, reuse, this, I remember, of course, it was COVID. It was the big Earth Day celebration was going to be at Jump, and it was going to be a full-on reduce, reuse extravaganza. And so I would assume that that's still kind of in play. And if I missed it, I'm so sorry, but I don't think that has like been released yet, right? Am I understanding that right? Okay.
Commissioner, Chairman, yes, you're correct. We haven't done that. We had it all planned out right before COVID.
I know,
It was going to be a jump, and then it didn't happen. We've had some fits and starts since then. It is on our agenda. We haven't decided if we're going to make it as big of a splash as it was before, or if we're going to combine it with another effort, but you did not miss it.
Okay.
It's still on the table.
That sparked another
Commissioner
question,
Morgan.
Chair. I'm sure some of you are familiar with Shade City that happened in April over the weekend of Earth Day. They did a really cool event at the Botanical Gardens, and they didn't have any waste. They were trying to promote conservation and other really cool programs that are local, whether it's Ridge to Rivers or the Idaho River Trails Association. Is there any collaboration to have that similar format be done with future events that's done with this in collaboration with the city, or going out and having programming available to help educate when there are events to help them be able to accommodate when there is a lot of excessive trash from those events?
Commissioner and Chair, thank you for the question. Yeah, I did hear it. It was a brewing festival, right? Shade City Brewing Festival. I did not attend, but I heard it was great. And I did also hear that they were really good at reducing the amount of waste that they created. So we definitely do collaborate with those events. There's a staff member of mine that's on the special events committee. So he works with those events and definitely tries to collaborate with them to try to figure out ways, okay, how can we reduce waste? We work with Tree Fort's been great. Right now it's voluntary. This goes back to the stick and the carrot, right? We have these great events that want to do more, right? And they're motivated to do it. And then so we work with them and try to help them. Then there's other events who really just don't care, right? Like they're an event just to make money, really. And so how do we navigate that? We're working on trying to we already have draft policies where we're going to sort of inch up what's required of all special events that go through special event committee, and then also inch up what's required out of city events too, so that we're walking the walk. So it starts with a few different things. A lot of them is like not giving out. A lot of events focus around beverages for one reason or another. And so you see a garbage can full of plastic cups and it's just like, what a waste, right? So part of those policies is that proposed policies are that, you have to come up with a different way to dispense your beverage, whether it is a reusable container or something that can be recycled at least. And so we are definitely thinking about that, and it's great to see those events like Shade City and Tree Fort who really go above and beyond what they need to do.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Any other questions before we wrap up here?
Thanks again.
All right, hearing it. Thank you. All right, and that brings us to the final item on our agenda, the Public Works Commission subcommittees. And if you reach back into the recesses of your minds, then you can remember the past couple of meetings, we've had a few small discussions around the potential for diving deeper into a few topics that really need our focused attention and our continued learning as we make some pretty big decisions around two particular topics, our climate action, as it is pretty broad, as we saw just a few slices of today, and also helping guide some of the decisions around our water renewal utility plan and some of the infrastructure that will be developed with the bond that was just passed. And so we are finally ready to kick off. And so with these two subcommittees, what we are going to do is officially start the Water Renewal Subcommittee and Climate Action Subcommittee with myself and Commissioner Crowley as the representatives on the Water Renewal Subcommittee, and Commissioners Morgan and Ellis as the representatives on the Climate Action Subcommittee. And so what this will sort of entail, over about the next year, I think we'll do a trial run for about a year. We're going to dive into the nitty-gritty and get into some more lengthy discussions that we just are not able to have in our time up here regularly enough and in enough detail to really be effective. And so we will work with staff to set up meetings and create a platform where we do share documents, get these regular updates, and produce minutes. I do ask that those minutes are made available to the full commission, either through our agenda packet or otherwise. And then at our September meeting, a representative from these subcommittees provide an update on the work that has been done so far to create our broad scope of work and the timeline for some of the discussions and decisions that we would propose and anything that potentially may come before the commission for further discussion or decision. We'll follow up with those who are members of our new subcommittees with any other guidance around avoiding quorum and other public disclosures, things like that. And we'll go over a few of those details, I think, in one of our early meetings. But yes, very, very exciting work that we'll be able to really dive deep into some of these topics and hopefully help the commission and council make some more informed decisions down the road. Am I missing anything so far? Am I avoiding legal trouble? So with that, I would open up for any quick feedback that you all have before we wrap up for the day. Commissioner Ellis.
So you're going to follow up by giving us more details, and that may not necessarily mean when the content comes our way. Is that trying to
Correct.
figure that part out?
My understanding so far is that we will work with staff to get all the materials sort of front loaded into our first couple of meetings so we can really understand sort of what we're doing, what we're tackling, what the needs of staff are that we will be able to help inform and guide in our capacity as commissioners. And then identify ways that we would time out our work, at least for the coming year. And hopefully get more information to us more effectively as we do make some of these large decisions.
Thank you.
All right. Any other questions, comments, concerns, or threats? All right. Hearing none, is there anything else to come before the commission? If not, then I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
Chair, I make a motion to adjourn today's meeting.
We have a motion from Commissioner Morgan. Do we have a second?
I second.
Sorry.
Second.
I'll second that.
All those in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
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 All right.
Any opposed, the same sign? Hearing none, the motion carries and we are adjourned. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.